About a week ago, the second spot on the tank leaderboards were taken by Tread, the rank 1 Orisa in EU. If any of you have already watched my Reaper analysis, you'll know Havoc in the top left, as well as Yazan in the top right. For the first fight, the most distinctive move Tread makes is spear spinning down to the low ground to contest cart and zone the enemy backline. Of course, when the D.Va sees this, she takes the space Tread leaves, but not without a close scare, with Tread barely missing out on the Javelin. He then quickly spear spins in to zone the D.Va away from her team, splitting the Tracer and Pharah from continuing to push. This time, he hits the Javelin, and he fortifies to keep pushing his advantage, which I might be foreshadowing later. After resetting his cooldowns, he rotates back the main choke, and we get to see a bit of Havoc Tread synergy. Havoc gets to play in the enclosed room, allowing him to deny the Tracer, and just by a sheer miracle, Tread happens to catch Yazan slacking, getting a free pick this fight. With the man advantage, Tread closes the gap with Spear Spin, committing with Havoc to dive the enemy backline in order to look for more kills. With that in mind, Tread gets a nice Javelin onto the Juno, almost securing a nice stagger kill. Next fight, the hold starts to become a bit shaky. You can see Tread's team starting to lose space as the enemy Tracer flanks wide by the coast, whereas the majority of Tread's team are stacked down the same angle. Knowing this, Tread disengages with Spear Spin back to the next corner, which ends up making the fight a lot more favourable for his team. You can see why by looking at the Tracer's POV, as her flank becomes a lot more narrow and enclosed. If you were in Tread's position, would you disengage this? Some more basic cooldown trades happen on the front line, like trading Spear Spin for micro missiles, and you can see the enemy team try their very best to swing around the corner. Eventually, Tread's backline do get dove, but look at what he does. Instead of running back, he decides to engage on the enemy backline, not only zoning both supports, not only forcing out orbital ray, but also somehow killing both supports, basically without any help. Now, how is this possible? Well, pay close attention to the positioning of the enemy supports. They're actually fairly close to Tread, which means that Tread has a positional advantage that he can push. Secondly, pay attention to the cooldowns. The Ana has already used Nade and Sleep Dart, meaning Tread also has a cooldown advantage that he can push. Combine this with some great mechanics and a fucking Olympic level Javelin, and he doesn't just recognize the advantage he has, he capitalizes on it. That's actually where I want the focus of this next fight to be, the Javelins. Right after he kills the Juno, he catches the Tracer the millisecond she comes at her recall. To be fair, she was in a straight line, so maybe you're not that impressed. However, not even 30 seconds later, and this guy hits a 25 meter mid-air Javelin against the best Pharah in Europe. I know I've already made a Mikey joke in my Reaper video, but this is how you shoot your shots. The best part is, Tread's not even done. Havoc tries getting a solo blossom on the enemy Pharah, but he barely misses out on the kill and he ends up dying. However, Tread is able to get the trade by landing his Javelin on the enemy Ana and securing the kill. Unfortunately, he is forced to use Fortify to live, which arguably costs his life, as after he pops the Terra Surge to zone the orbital ray, he hasn't got another Fortify. Still though, I think the Terra Surge was reasonable, especially considering his Juno was just 10% away from her own orbital ray. Now going over to Samoa, we see Tread get more unlucky than Chipsa, and he just so happens to roll out blindly into a Zarya comp. To make matters worse, Juno Zen is pretty good into Orisa, as the Zen actually has speed to be able to run away from the Orisa, and obviously, he can pile on the damage with Discord. But for a man like Tread, this isn't a challenge. To put it simply to how he plays this, he does a lot of cooldown baiting. In other words, Tread cannot run onto the Juno Zen backline if the Zen has Discord and the Zarya has bubbles. So, as you can see, after the enemy Reaper has used Wraith, and the Hyper Ring is out, Tread decides to play as close as he can to the boxes, because the closer he is to the Zen, the scarier he becomes. This scare, or aura if you want to use that term, basically forces the Zen to use the Discord on the Orisa, in which case Tread just spear spins out to cleanse it. At this point, he lands a good Javelin onto the Zarya, forcing a bubble onto the Reaper. While his team do get lucky with the kill onto the Tracer, hopefully this shows the nuance of playing Orisa into Zarya Zen instead of just running it in. He rinse and repeats this process again after the Reaper wraiths out, this time using Fortify to disengage instead of Spear Spin. Just a quick edit, I do want to briefly mention as well that he's doing this only after the Reaper leaves. Otherwise, his backline is going to be dealing with a Reaper while he's trying to bait cooldowns. After capping the points, he basically does the exact same thing, playing a bit closer to bait the Discord, then spear spinning out to cleanse it. Afterwards, he sees an opportunity to punish the Zen for wasting Discord, but unfortunately, half his team is dead, so the Zen just runs away with speed boost. Unfortunately, but understandably, he switches to Ramattra for the rest of the map. However, we're back to Orisa on the last point of Samoa, where we see the Zen again, but this time without Zarya. This makes Tread's decision making significantly easier, as once he cleanses that Discord, he'll look to punish the Zen, which is exactly what he does. Combined with the extra speed from Hypering, alongside the spear spin, and he chows down the Zen quicker than Nikocado Avocado chows down on a mukbang. Also notice that when Tread pushes the Zen, the Ashe and the D.Va can't see him because of the barrier, so they can't punish him. Now with 30% and ticking on the Tread's belt, notice how he uses the main pillar on the point to bait the Discord once again. You can see how he intentionally keeps spear spin while moving up, just using the natural cover, so that once the Discord hits him, he spear spins straight back into cover to cleanse the Discord. Not to mention, Discord isn't just the only cooldown advantage he gains here. Knowing how good Tread is, he almost certainly catches the enemy Juno, popping both her Hypering and her gliders. Knowing that he can punish the Juno safely because he just cleansed the Discord, and he's in his own orbital ray, Tread decides to pop the Fortify aggressively to secure the kill on the Juno, as well as catching the Zen for the cherry on top. Many Orisa players just think that Fortify is a reactive, defensive cooldown used to absorb aggression. And that is true, you can literally see Tread tank an entire pulse bomb because of Fortify. However, that isn't the full story. Knowing when to use Fortify proactively when you see an advantage you can push is only a skill few can master, and this doesn't have to be just a cooldown or positional advantage. In this example, KSA, who is also the GOAT of Orisa, knows that his team have an ultimate advantage. As a result, he fortifies first aggressively to force out the enemy cryo, so that he can Terra Surge later and punish the mate. It's kinda like a game of chess, and only the best of the best Orisa players will be able to do this consistently. This does actually lead me on to Terra Surge, and there's two main ways I see top level players using it. Firstly, securing kills when you have an advantage, as we just saw with KSA, or secondly, forcing a fuck ton of cooldowns or even ultimates and then getting the fuck out. You can see that second use in full effect here, as Tread spins onto the enemy backline, pops Fortify, then Terra Surge, and ends up forcing out both the Transcendence and the Orbital Ray before swiftly realizing that he needs to get out to live. Speaking of Orbital Ray, you can Terra Surge to zone it, as Tread tried to do in Shambali, but you do need adequate support so you don't get melted. Hopefully I've shown that Orisa is more than meets the eye. While she is problematic, as I've talked about in the past, the skill curve is actually quite impressive. You can express that skill by getting into the Olympics and hitting insane Javelins, learning to live another day by disengaging, but also learning to not let opportunities slip by the wayside. Do not let people who do not understand the game tell you that you should never fortify first, because clearly there's some cases where that can win fights. As always, if you're interested in my Sparrow approved coaching, check the link down below, as well as Tread socials. Until next time.